In week 5, we looked at the idea of taking chords, so an A minor chord for example, and lacing into that some of the notes from an A minor scale, or a C major chord, and then adding into that some of the chords from a C major scale. And when you describe that, it can start sounding a little bit complex, I guess. So we're taking two things and we're fusing them together. But actually it's really not. It's about just playing some chords, fiddling around with your fingers a little bit and adding some additional notes in. And I guess that's the hallmark of a guitar player who's kind of took the playing to a next level really, where they've learned some chords, they can put them together, but they've started to advance on that a little bit and try and make them sound a little bit more interesting. But learning the scales from which the chord was built and then consciously trying to add to those chords is definitely a good approach to get you started. So for example, we might take a C chord and then we might add into the C chord the 3rd fret 2nd string, because that note, which is a D note, belongs in the C major scale. So simple stuff. And then within the context of the finger picking that we looked at in week 5, we just kind of pick through that and play about. Now you do have some examples of that, and I'm not actually going to go through them because at this point I want you to start like really focusing on the music, looking at the rhythms and picking your own way through it. But I would like to set a little challenge for you, and that's to go back to week 3. And in week 3 I gave you a handout that had a series of key signatures and the chords within those key signatures. You've also been given in week 5 a sheet with 3 scales on it: A minor, D major and G major. So if you look at the chords in the key of D major, for example, just put together a 4-chord progression and then look for opportunities to take some of the notes from the D major scale and put them in there and just pick through them using something like Travis picking or Carter picking, for example. And I would hope that when you do that, you start finding that your playing starts sounding a little bit more interesting, and eventually it'll just become force of habit, so you won't have to think about the scales, you'll just know what works and you'll know which notes marry up with certain chords. So we are verging a little bit on the music theory, I guess, and sorry, I kind of struggled with music theory a little bit. It sort of occupied the same part of my mind that mathematics does, which is an area where I just kind of clam up a little bit. But if we are taking our playing to the next level, taking on an understanding of the rudiments of music theory certainly does help and it is relevant. So by that we're talking about the construction of scales, a knowledge of all the different notes on your fretboard, how chords are built up, a knowledge of reading rhythms, which we've looked at quite a lot and we're not actually going to be looking at anymore in the remaining sessions. But then taking on that information and then being able to utilise it and put together stuff that sounds a little bit more exciting than perhaps what we had been playing up until that point. So next step is to write out some chord progressions, add in some additional notes, of course work through the exercises because there's some examples of how that works. And if you do struggle with that at all, please just give me a ring, set up a Skype session. I'm also wanting to do some one-to-ones at this point, so book me in for a one-to-one session and we can start working at these things together. But also listen to some folk music, listen to like some Dave Van Ronk or some Bob Dylan or even like the Clancy Brothers, people like this that picked an awful lot, and start trying to listen to what's going on, like with the chords and then the melodies that are kind of interwoven into that. Because listening to this music does expand your playing ability, and you don't necessarily have to be playing guitar, have a guitar in your hands to be working towards becoming a better guitar player. You can just consciously listen to things and try and figure out what's going on. So next stage, get out your practice sheet and start playing.